Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Everyone. Yes. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I would like first to thank the organizing committee for inviting me for this prestigious meeting. Today we will talk about recent changes in TB diagnostics. As an overview of this talk, we will start about talking a little bit about epidemiology, about TB, how do we diagnose both latent TB and active TB, and then what are the new technologies in the pipeline for TB diagnostics, and then what is our ultimate goal for using this advanced technology for TB diagnostics. For the burden of TB, it's a worldwide problem. Believe it or not, 1/3 of the world population is latently infected with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. According to WHO report 2011, we have more than 8.7 million new TB cases, with 13% of those were co-infected with HIV and resulted in 1.4 million deaths. 0.4 million were HIV infected too, and 1 million were HIV negative. 85% of the distribution of TB cases were in Asia and Africa, with 55% of the cases were in Asia and 30% in Africa. There were more than 300,000 multi-drug resistant TB cases, and more than 84 countries reported extensively drug resistant TB. For the top 20 countries with the highest burden in TB, as I said, they are mainly in Africa and Asia. I would like to point out two countries, India and Bangladesh, which are ranked 1 and 5 in global burden of TB worldwide. The reason I'm going to point those two countries is because the fact that there are 27 cases so far, or the last time I checked, 27 cases of donor-derived TB cases in transplant patients. And the majority of our donors in Saudi Arabia are from those two countries, Bangladesh and India. So that's why we need to keep the TB transmission in our mind from the donors to the transplant patients. Now, how do we diagnose TB? I'll talk a little bit about diagnosis of latent TB, and then I'll move to the more important topic, which is the active TB. For the latent TB, we have two techniques, the TB skin testing and the interferon gamma release assay. For TB skin testing, it has been used in the worldwide more than 100 years. It's an in vivo testing. It's used the PPD as antigen and with intradermal injection. It requires 2 visits to the clinic. First to do the injection, and the second time after 48 or 72 hours to read the result. A BCG vaccination can intervene with this test. Also the non-TB mycobacteria, also the misreading or incorrect reading of the medical staff. It can boost also the immune response. For the interferon gamma releasing assays, there are 2 assays in the market, the T-spot and the quantiferon TB gold in tube. The basic point or the basic principle of this test is the detection of the release of interferon gamma from T cells upon exposure to mycobacteria-specific antigen, such as ESAT10, CFP6, and TB7.7. It's in vitro assay. It can be done in 24 hours. Single visit to the hospital is sufficient, and it's not affected by BCG. Back in Nebraska, when I was doing my fellowship, we did a little study on the new employee in the hospital. So we gathered data about 242 new employees from 2006 until 2008. All those people went under screening by TB skin testing, quantiferon TB gold chest X-ray, in addition to questionnaire. The questionnaire actually, yes.
Two slides here, but I'm showing only one.
Yeah, I know.
Because, okay.
Yeah, okay. To the, along with a questionnaire about TB symptoms, the past TB history, previous TB skin testing, previous prophylaxis, BCG vaccination, and the origin of the country. So based on this little study, we come up with the following results. First, 46 employees had positive TB skin testing and quantiferon TB gold. 86 individuals have positive TB skin testing and negative quantiferon TB gold, and no individual had a negative TB skin testing and positive quantiferon. So we came up with the conclusion that quantiferon TB gold had higher specificity than TB skin testing. Then we moved on to make a cost effectiveness study. In the United States, it's not like here everything is for free. No, it costs a lot of money. So we did the cost analysis based on whether we use only TB skin testing as a screening, or we use TB skin testing and then quantiferon in case it was positive. There were different factors implemented in this cost effectiveness study, such as the cost of TB skin testing, the quantiferon, the chest X-ray, the healthcare provider fee, and the lab fee, and the isoniazid prophylaxis fee. So based on this data from 242 individuals, we could save $50,000 if we followed up the positive TB skin testing by quantiferon TB gold. And then we recommended the two-step process to detect latent TB. How's that? We do it by doing the screening of TB skin testing first. If it's positive, if it's negative, we stop. If it's positive, we do the quantiferon or any IGRA assay. If it's negative, we stop. If it's positive, we do chest X-ray and isoniazid. So those are the two tests used for latent TB. However, they are not recommended by WHO for diagnosis of active TB. So what kind of different tests we use for TB, active TB diagnosis? The microscopy, molecular detection, the culture, then confirmatory of the positive culture, and then drug susceptibility testing. For the microscope, it is the primary method used worldwide, especially in poor countries. It's very cheap, and it is associated with high specificity. However, it has low sensitivity from 20 to 80%, especially in children or patients with HIV. Over the years, the technologies improved using microscopy, from light microscope to fluorescent microscope, which has higher sensitivity than light microscope and less time required for testing. Then in the recent years, they came up with LED microscope, which integrates both the fluorescent microscope and the light microscope. It is more, I think it's cheaper than the fluorescent microscope. So if you are starting a new TB lab, the LED microscopy is the microscope to go. Here I have two examples for you for staining, the Zinn-Nelson staining and the fluorescent staining. And for sure, always using the concentrated smear has higher sensitivity than using the direct smear. Now we move on to the molecular detection of TB in patient specimen. So direct nucleic acid amplification test or direct NAT. It's for sure faster than the culture method. It has high specificity, more than 97%. Its sensitivity actually is more than 95% when the AFP smear is positive, and it drops down to less than 50% when the AFP smear is negative. CDC recommendation, the direct NAT is required for the pulmonary specimen from patient independent of smear microscopy results. So whether it's positive or negative, CDC recommend to do one test by molecular. The molecular testing can be done in few hours. We can use it for identification and differentiation, for epidemiology, for susceptibility studies. It's labor extensive, as we know, is expensive, and it has issues with contamination. What kind of tests that are available in the market, from oldest to the newest? Amplicor from Roche, AMT from Gene Probe. We have ProbeTech from BD. Nowadays, most people move to Gene Expert from Cepheid, and line probe assays from InnoGenetics and Hain Life Science. And I'm assuming that who will recommend LAMP assay, which is an isothermal assay, in the upcoming report in 2013. And I'll spend a few minutes talking about LAMP in the upcoming few slides. Now, regarding sensitivity and specificity about all those techniques, I summarize it in one table. The bottom line, when we have pulmonary specimen and AFB positive, you expect the sensitivity and specificity to be more than 90%. Specificity actually is always higher. When it's a smear negative, sensitivity, as we said, it drops down less than 50, while specificity remains high, more than 90%. Gene Expert in the lower line, they claim that they have sensitivity more than 85% in a smear negative specimen. I think we need more studies to confirm that. For extrapulmonary specimens, still the specificity is high, more than 90%, while sensitivity range from 27 to 98%. For LAMP, loop-mediated isothermal amplification test, it's very powerful technique. It's an isothermal NAT. It is rapid. It can be done in 60 to 90 minutes. It's robust. It can produce millions of DNA copies in hour and a half. And it is cheap. It is isothermal, so we really don't need the PCR thermocycler. There's 3 steps. There is a special DNA polymerase called BST DNA polymerase that can amplify DNA at 60 to 65 degrees. The ultimate degree is 63 degrees. We extract the nucleic acid, do the amplification, and then the detection can be done by fluorescence and turbidity. It's a great technique in poor countries. And now there are several studies actually in South Africa and Japan, and they are getting great results with these techniques. So I'm assuming it will be endorsed by WHO very soon too. Another powerful technique is the line probe assay. The basic idea about it is extraction of the nucleic acid, then PCR amplification by biotinylated labeled primers. And after the amplification, we do the hybridization to immobilized probes on the strips. And then we create the color by adding the strip avidine and alkaline phosphatase. And according to the pattern, we would know what kind of, what species we have. This technique actually is for InnoGenetics and Hain Life Science. They came up with several kits. One for detection, the most common mycobacteria, another kit for additional mycobacteria, and they come up also with a kit that will detect different species of Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex. And when I will talk about the drug susceptibility, they also have specific patterns for wild type and resistant strains. We move on now to talk about the culture. Culture is still the gold standard for identification for mycobacteria. We are using it for susceptibility. It is sensitive. 10 to 100 bacilli per ml are enough to detect the positive result, and it's still required for AFP smear negative specimens. We have solid media and liquid media. Solid media, for sure, it's cheaper, so it's good for poor countries, but it has a slower rate of mycobacterial growth. For liquid media, faster growth, but it's expensive, and it is associated also with contamination issues. However, CDC recommends that we run both solid and liquid media for each TB specimen. In the market, there are several types of liquid culture systems, such as Mediated, Bactec Alert, and Versatrek, and Mediated is the most widely used liquid culture worldwide. When Mediated flags positive, we need to confirm the result, it is mycobacteria. So a few people, some labs do the AFP stain, other labs do the molecular testing, and most labs actually do both techniques. So the NAT for confirmatory of positives, we can use the BD ProbeTech, AccuProbe, and also line probe assay. It's gaining also market in the confirmation of the TB positive specimen. However, the most recent technique now is using the lateral flow assay. The lateral flow assay, it has been widely used now in China and in Japan. And again, it's for the confirmatory of positive culture. It is rapid, easy assay. It detects the specific MTB protein, which is MBP64. It can be done in 15 minutes. Its sensitivity and specificity is more than 98%. Okay, now we have a positive mycobacteria. We need to do the drug susceptibility testing. Before talking about different techniques, I would like to throw in a few definitions. When we say multi-drug resistant TB, we are talking about resistance to rifampin and isoniazide. Extensively drug resistant TB, it means MDR-TP plus resistance to fluoroquinolone and resistance to at least one injectable antibiotic, such as kanamycin or amikacin. When we say direct DST, it means we're doing the test directly on the patient specimen. Indirect DST, we're doing the DST on colonies from the culture. Who recommends liquid culture and line probe assay for detection of first-line susceptibility? For second-line susceptibility, liquid culture is the only recommended test by WHO. I give you an example of the liquid broth method for DST, Bactec Mediated 960. It's the most common method, actually. It's an indirect test, and we can get the result in 4 to 13 days. And it was endorsed by WHO in 2007. There are several molecular techniques that can be used for drug susceptibility testing also. There are the line probe assays that we mentioned about and the gene expert. For the line probe assay, we have, again, the Inolipa and also the Hain Life Science Technology. It was endorsed by WHO in 2008. It can detect the resistance to rifampin and isoniazide. And I think 2 years ago, Hain Technology came with a special kit to detect what's called the second line, the fluoroquinolone and aminoglycosides, and also they have a kit for detecting the ethambutol. So based on the pattern, actually, we can detect either it's susceptible, like the first from left to right, like the first strip is susceptible, the second pattern or the second strip is resistant to rifampin and isoniazide, and the third one is resistant to isoniazide. It detects the mutation in its gene responsible for resistance, whether to rifampin and isoniazide, and also, as I mentioned, they have it for fluoroquinolone and ethambutol. Their sensitivity and specificity actually are very high. It's more than 90% for isoniazide resistance and more than 97% in rifampin resistance. For gene expert, It was endorsed by WHO in 2010. It's very robust technique, 2 to 3 minutes hands-on. We can get the result in 2 hours, and I know that Dr. Kutub will talk about it in details in his lecture. It's expensive technique for sure. It has sensitivity and specificity more than 99% for rifampin resistance. If you go back to WHO report, you can tell that WHO is just in love with this technique, even though it's really expensive. Now, we will switch gears to talk about direct culture and drug susceptibility testing. So we're doing the culture and susceptibility simultaneously. There are several techniques. I will point out only 2 briefly: microscopic observed drug susceptibility testing and the nitrate reductase assay. For the mods, it was endorsed by WHO in 2010. It can be used for both direct and indirect susceptibility testing. It's a manual liquid-based culture method. It's fast and cheap when we can get the result within 7 to 10 days. And it uses the coding characteristic of TB as a presumptive identification. And at the same time, it can detect isoniazide and or rifampin resistance when we compare the growth in the growth control well compared to the wells that contain rifampin or isoniazide. It has more than 92% sensitivity for isoniazide, and for rifampin resistance more than 98% sensitivity and specificity. I'll give you here an example. You see by day 7, I believe, the cording started to happen. By day 9, it's fully corded. For nitrate reductase assay, from its name, nitrate reductase, so it depends on the biochemical identification for TB for being able to reduce nitrate to nitrite. So we add the reagent to change the color into red or pink. It can be used for both direct and indirect testing. It was endorsed by WHO in 2010. It has sensitivity and specificity for rifampin resistance and isoniazide resistance more than 97%. Here I have an example for you. Strain A, we see the growth in the control, no growth in the rifampin containing tube, so this is susceptible to rifampin. The other one, mycobacteria grow in the rifampin containing tube, so it is resistant to rifampin. Let's move now to the new technologies used in the pipeline, or tested actually in the pipeline for TB diagnostics. If you go to WHO report, the annual and semi-annual, there are actually a lot of techniques that are being on study right now. I picked up only 2. Urinary antigen detection and volatile organic compound. For the urine antigen detection, or LAM, from lipo-arabinomannan test, it's a glycopeptide that is released from metabolically active TB. It can be detected in serum and in urine. Actually, the ELISA gave better results in urine than serum. That's why they are trying to develop this test in urine. It can give us the result in 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours, even though it has low sensitivity, but it has higher specificity and negative predictive value. It's very high. So we can use the negative predictive value to rule out active TB. Luckily enough, its sensitivity is slightly higher in HIV-infected patients. For the other techniques that I chose, volatile organic compound, from the name, it's volatile organic, so it depends on the smelling of the breath of the patient and detecting that odor that is specific for the mycolic acid of TB. They create something called electric nose that can distinguish mycobacteria from other infection, and some papers are claiming that it is like it has 100% ability to detect MTB and distinguish it actually from other infections. but larger studies are needed for more valuable data. It is actually a very potential method for rapid, accurate, and non-invasive identification method for mycobacteria. After talking about all those techniques, what's actually our ultimate goal for advanced technology to use in TB diagnostics? Our ultimate goal actually is to find a simple, rapid, cheap point-of-care test to detect TB. There are a lot of groups are working on it, but so far we did not have a real POCT. They are claiming that GeneXpert is POCT, but it's still very expensive. So hopefully in the upcoming WHO reports, we'll see a new POCT test. Thank you very much. Open.